nostalgia, a sentimental longing or wistful affection for a period in the past. It can result in an array of positive emotional states, including increased optimism and inspiration, boosted self-esteem, and feelings of purpose and youthfulness. When people who play older games or games from their childhood are asked why they still play those games, more often than not they say it's because they make them feel nostalgic. And I assume many of you can relate to that, because so can I. However, I also believe that nostalgia isn't the whole picture here. What if games back then were simply better?
Right, yeah, of course.
Answering that question turns out to be quite tricky. You could of course just say,
Well, yeah, of course they were better.
but is that really an objective statement, or do we simply enjoy them more because of the effect that nostalgia has on us? Were they actually better games? If not, why do we still enjoy them so much? I think the answer might not be what you expect. To answer these questions, there is something else we need to define first, and that is what actually makes a good game. As you could imagine, there is no objective correct answer to this question, so I will do my best to formulate an answer that I believe to be correct. And if your opinion is still different from mine after the video, I'm happy to debate you in the comments because, well, that's kind of what this is all about. I firmly believe that it's not graphics, not the complexity, not the skill ceiling, the sound effects, the animation, or the budget, but it's a singular metric, which can with 100% accuracy tell you whether a game is good or not. Is it fun? Yeah, I really do think it's that simple. But that's not a very satisfying answer, is it? And admittedly, there is a lot more to this, because I would argue that there are a good few new games that can be fun. Then just why does there seem to be more and more people flocking to older games? What do they have to offer that newer ones don't? Besides nostalgia, of course. A major factor could be accessibility. These games tend to be extremely cheap when compared to today's titles, which makes them a great value proposition. Not only that, the vast majority are offline games, playable anywhere at any time. This is, for example, how companies like Nintendo even came to be. Their consoles were designed around portability. The PSP is another great example. Given the technological limitations of their time, older games also have a tendency to be simpler and easier to get into. This is what I personally believe to be a significant contributor to the appeal of older games, since the majority of gamers are actually casuals. They have jobs, family, or other responsibilities. Hence, a more laid-back or mechanically easier game could potentially be more appealing. I also want to touch upon the topic of franchising. Whenever a game studio is able to establish their game as an ongoing franchise, be either by updating their game or bringing out new versions of it, there is always one key element that comes with that: a loyal fan base. Recent reports have shown that most players aren't switching to newer games anymore, but rather are sticking to quote-unquote older games like Fortnite and GTA 5. These games might not be the oldest games, however they serve as perfect examples for the power of franchising. They have repeatedly iterated on their own games, one through new releases and the other through updates, and slowly perfected them over time. This has, firstly, given them the added benefit of their players being affected by the so powerful thing called nostalgia, but more importantly, it's given them a fan base. And that fan base won't just stop playing Fortnite for another game that's trying to be like Fortnite, just like nothing can replace Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, or GTA. Turns out this effect is so strong, you can then abuse your fan base for decades by copy and pasting the same games and still have them sell amazingly every time. I'm looking at you, Game Freak. But these games, when they came out, they innovated. They invented new concepts and gameplay mechanics. They made their game feel and play in a unique way. More importantly, however, is that they kept on iterating on their initial vision, and they kept their experience unique. It's really easy to tell whether a game's beginnings came from a vision from someone passionate who wanted to build something great, or whether a game started as an idea for a money printer. Because the proper execution of a video game requires passion. Look at any game that's been around for years and has a loyal following. The thing they all have in common is that the people behind them have great excitement, passion and love for what they are doing, and it's exactly that which all of the modern game studios seem to have forgotten. It is in said manner that the explosive growth of the gaming industry has led to the death of games and to the birth of products. And this is also exactly why these larger game studios have simply not been finding success with their massive budget games, while games like Palworld, Helldivers, Satisfactory or Baldur's Gate have been immensely successful while also being community favorites. They have all created their own completely new fan bases. It's the smaller studios who are bringing this industry back to its roots. It's these people who are outperforming AAA multi-billion-dollar studios with a fraction of the budget, who are showing us all what it means to make games for the sake of making games and not for the sake of making money. Because the latter will naturally follow the prior and not the opposite way around. The game Skull and Bones by Ubisoft is the perfect example of how not to make a game. The idea of the game was to iterate and to improve upon the infamous pirate game Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Besides being stuck in production hell numerous times, they also thought it would be a good idea to make the game live service. This means a battle pass-like mechanic and a lot of microtransactions to make the game more engaging for longer. The key word here is engaging, not fun. The game they were planning to expand on did have a few microtransactions, but not any that would take away from enjoying the game as it was without buying anything additionally. So why did Skull and Bones need so many and such destructive microtransactions? It didn't. This decision was purely made out of greed. Essentially what they did is they created a problem by making resources too scarce on purpose, and then they sold you the solution. I mean, the entire concept of microtransactions is inherently a bad thing for games, at least for those who are free to play. If you're paying for a game, you should get the full experience without having to pay again. Nowadays, you have to buy the game, the battle pass, the DLC, and other microtransactions to get the full experience out of a game that you've already bought. I mean, if you say it out loud, it just sounds ridiculous. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here. To reconnect to our original question, whether games were actually better back in the day, or whether we just perceived them to be as such due to nostalgia, I would strongly argue that while nostalgia does definitely skew our memories positively, games back then were just better. This, in combination with the bias that a lot of us have through nostalgia, results in many people going back to these old, technologically primitive, extremely simple, yet fun games. Thank you for watching.
But there's no sense crying over every mistake. You just keep on